What could make a king so obsessed with a woman that he risked everything? His marriage, his kingdom, even the church itself, only to have her executed 3 years later. And Boleyn was that woman. The second wife of Henry VIII, she captivated a king, enraged a nation, and left a trail of controversy that still fascinates historians today. But why did Henry VIII kill Anne Boleyn? Anne was born around 1501 to Thomas Boleyn, a skilled diplomat, and Elizabeth Howard, a member of England's elite nobility. Her family was well connected, but she was not destined for greatness in a world where men held the power and women were often merely ornaments of marriage. From an early age, Anne was sent abroad to complete her education. She first went to the Netherlands, where she was exposed to the refinement and diplomacy of European courts. Later, she served at the French court under Queen Claude, where she learned the arts of conversation, music, dance, and the subtle power of influence. By the time she returned to England, Anne was not just polished, she was dangerous. She had learned how to command attention, how to make men desire her, and how to use her intelligence as a weapon. Returning to England in the 1520s, Anne became a lady-in-waiting, first to Queen Catherine of Aragon's household and later in positions that allowed her proximity to the king. She was striking, not in the conventional sense but in presence. Dark eyes, quick wit, and audacity made her unforgettable. Unlike other women, she refused to bend easily to authority. When Henry VIII noticed her, she refused to be his mistress. She demanded a crown if she was to have his devotion. This was audacious, dangerous even, but it only drew Henry in closer. Her refusal to submit fueled his obsession, and soon she became the center of his thoughts and desires. Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon had failed to produce a surviving male heir, leaving the Tudor dynasty's future uncertain. Anne's intelligence, charm, and ambition convinced Henry that she could give him what Catherine could not, a son who would secure his legacy. But winning Anne's hand was not simple. Henry had to challenge the Pope, break with the Catholic Church, and declare himself head of the Church of England, a bold move that would redefine English politics and religion forever. And had not only captivated a king's heart, she had become a symbol of revolutionary change. Anne and Henry were secretly married in 1533, and she was crowned queen shortly afterward. Yet, despite the grandeur, her position was precarious. Catherine's supporters considered Anne a usurper who had destroyed a beloved queen. Anne's political influence, sharp tongue, and refusal to remain silent made her enemies among the court nobility. She was ambitious, intelligent, and unafraid to defy tradition. Every move she made was scrutinized, every word judged. While some admired her courage and intellect, many despised her. She was a queen who dared to challenge the norms, and in Tudor England that was dangerous. Pressure to produce a male heir mounted relentlessly. In 1533 Anne gave birth to Elizabeth, a daughter whose future would be extraordinary, yet the absence of a male heir disappointed Henry. Miscarriages haunted Anne in the following years, and with each lost pregnancy her enemies grew bolder. By 1536, Henry had already turned his attention to Jane Seymour, a quiet, obedient, and seemingly fertile lady-in-waiting. Anne's inability to deliver a son weakened her position, making her vulnerable in a court full of schemers and ambitious men. Henry could not simply divorce Anne. Annulment would undermine his authority and the new church he had created. He needed a solution that would eliminate her completely, politically and personally. Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief minister, orchestrated a series of accusations: adultery with multiple men, incest with her brother George Boleyn, and treason against the king. These charges were almost certainly fabricated but served as the perfect pretext, and had become too outspoken, too independent, and too threatening to the king's control. And was arrested and imprisoned in the Tower of London, the cold stone walls bearing witness to the collapse of her fortune. Her trial was swift and unfair. The jurors were composed largely of her political enemies, and the outcome was predetermined. Despite her eloquence, grace, and insistence on innocence, she was found guilty. On May 19, 1536, Anne stepped onto the scaffold. She addressed the crowd with dignity, asking for prayers for the king and declaring her innocence. A French executioner awaited her, and with one precise stroke of the sword, Anne Boleyn was gone, ending a life that had been marked by ambition, intelligence, and controversy at just 35 years old. Anne's story did not end with her death. Her daughter, Elizabeth, would ascend to the throne as Elizabeth I, one of England's most celebrated monarchs. The woman who had been vilified, mocked, and condemned had left a legacy that far outshone her detractors. Anne Boleyn was hated not because she was inherently evil or deceitful, but because she dared to defy tradition, because she wielded intelligence and charm in a male-dominated society, and because she had become inconvenient to a king who demanded total obedience. The hatred toward Anne Boleyn was complex and multifaceted. The people resented her for replacing Catherine of Aragon, who was seen as pious and just. The court hated her for her influence over Henry, her sharp tongue, and her ability to manipulate political alliances. Henry himself, once enamored, grew frustrated and resentful because she had failed to give him a son. And yet, despite all the venom directed toward her, Anne's audacity, intelligence, and political acumen were qualities that ensured her name would endure for centuries. Even centuries later, Anne Boleyn remains a figure of fascination. She was hated because she dared to rise above what society expected of her, because she challenged the king, and because she refused to conform. Her execution was not simply the result of personal failure or a lost marriage. It was the outcome of politics, ambition, and fear. She had outlived her usefulness, and Henry needed her removed to secure his dynasty and his authority. Anne Boleyn's life and death serve as a stark lesson in the deadly consequences of ambition, the ruthlessness of power, and the precarious position of women in Tudor England. She was hated because she dared to challenge a king, because she dared to think independently, and because she dared to be more than what society expected. Her story is a cautionary tale, but it is also one of resilience and legacy. Through her daughter Elizabeth, she achieved a form of immortality, shaping the future of England in ways she could never have imagined. Anne's fall was not just about Henry's frustration or Cromwell's scheming, it was also about the fragile nature of power itself. In the Tudor court, loyalty shifted like the wind, and even the slightest misstep could prove fatal. Anne's brilliance had propelled her into the highest circles of influence, but that same brilliance made her threatening to those who thrived on obedience and silence. She was a queen ahead of her time, unwilling to be submissive, and for that she was despised by many who could not imagine a woman wielding such power. Her execution was as much about silencing her voice as it was about freeing Henry for another marriage. And yet, history has a way of redeeming those who were once hated. Centuries later, Anne Boleyn is no longer seen only as the great whore her enemies branded her, but as a complex, fascinating woman whose ambition and intelligence left an indelible mark on England. She was betrayed, condemned, and destroyed, but her bloodline gave rise to one of the greatest rulers in English history. In a sense, and triumphed beyond death. Through Elizabeth she achieved the glory and immortality that Henry never expected. The woman who was so hated in life became a symbol of resilience, defiance, and legacy in death. Her story is also a reminder of the fragility of power and the dangers of unchecked authority. Henry VIII could change the fate of nations with a single decision, and yet, he was also ruled by his own insecurities and desires. Anne Boleyn's rise and fall show us how love can become obsession, how ambition can spark revolution, and how fear can destroy even the brightest lives. To understand is to understand not only the woman herself, but the dangerous world of the Tudor court, where survival often meant silence and speaking too boldly could cost you everything. Today, Anne Boleyn's name lives on, not just in history books but in films, novels, and popular imagination. She continues to inspire debate, fascination, and even admiration. Was she a victim, a manipulator, or both? Perhaps her true legacy lies in the fact that she cannot be reduced to a single role. She remains one of history's most compelling figures because she was flawed, ambitious, courageous, and human. And in her humanity, Anne Boleyn reminds us that behind every crown and title, there is a person, capable of greatness but never safe from tragedy.